Hey, welcome back to the channel, everybody. Alright, well, it's a little early in the morning. It's about 6:30 here. Getting out, try to beat the heat. Still having that obnoxiously hot weather here. So today we're gonna talk about falconry in Texas. This is a subject I've been doing a lot of studying on for about the last 8 months, since November. For some of y'all who are probably wondering, I'm 57 years old. You're probably thinking, Chris, how come you didn't look into falconry when you were younger? Well, to be quite honest with y'all, I did look into falconry when I was younger. And let me say this about falconry. Falconry is not getting a dog. It's not getting a cat. Okay? A bird of prey is not a pet. Falconry is a serious hobby that takes a lot of time. You have to be able to spend a lot of time with your bird. The bird needs a steady daily routine that you throw at it. Let me tell you something. If you think raising a dog can be difficult, it ain't nothing compared to raising a bird of prey. Okay? Now, we're going to talk about mainly falconry in Texas, because that's where I live. But let's first of all run down a little bit of history of falconry. How did falconry get started? Well, falconry got started because human beings are very intelligent or are very evil, one or the other. But how it originally started is in the winter time, people would see a bird of prey, take a prey item, and they would run over and they would steal that bird of prey's catch. They would take it home and cook it for their family. And then that led to the next step, where that guy thought, hey, wait a minute, what if I catch that bird and teach it to hunt for me, and me and that bird spend the winter together, and I hunt him and we share the food. And that's how the relationship started between a bird of prey and a human being. Now, back then, the humans released the bird in the spring, and some people still do today. As a matter of fact, y'all, that's exactly how I would do my falconering. You catch a bird in the fall. You try to catch a passage bird. For some of y'all that don't know, a passage bird is an immature bird, a bird that's under a year old. Ideally, you want to catch a bird that's, well, about 6 months away from the nest would be ideal. A bird that's been hunting, been somewhat successful. That way, when you release it back in the spring, it can go back and do its business. Imprints, you're stuck with them. Okay, you're stuck with an imprint. You're gonna have to have it for the rest of your life, or you're gonna have to pass it on. You can't release imprints back into the wild. All right, so let's talk about some of the rules here in Texas for falconry. Back in 2010, the state of Texas changed the rules. You used to only be able to have an American kestrel or a red-tailed hawk in Texas. Now, it looks like to me, from what I'm researched, you can have pretty much any bird native to the North America other than an eagle. Of course, you can't have a bald eagle anyway. And you got to be a master class falconer to have a golden eagle. But it looks like you could have, from what I'm reading, any other bird or researched. Now, the state of Texas does have a recommendation for birds that they would like you to fly, but it's not a rule. The state of Texas recommends that you fly a red-tailed hawk or a Harris hawk. They do not recommend an American kestrel. Now, originally, falconry, you could only have 2 birds as an apprentice. You could either have a red-tailed hawk or you could have an American kestrel. The theory behind that is that the red-tailed hawk and the American kestrel are so plentiful that if the falconer made a mistake and killed that bird, that it wouldn't be a great loss to the population. Okay, we don't think that way anymore, y'all. Okay, it's the thinking's just different now. You know, we want all our birds to survive. So why does the state of Texas not recommend an American kestrel when originally that was one of the... Man, kestrels can be difficult to take care of. All right, American kestrels, they're a very high metabolism bird. They're just more difficult to take care of than Harris hawk or a red-tailed hawk. You know, a red-tailed hawk is like the modern day pickup truck of falconry. You know, in these pickup trucks now, you can go to dinner in them, you can take the wife out on a date, or your girlfriend. You know, these pickup trucks now, they're really nice. They can do everything. Go to the hardware store, get a load. Well, that's the red-tailed hawk. He's the pickup truck of falconry. He can do it all. Now, let's talk about Texas, some of the rules that are kind of weird in Texas. In Texas, if you're an apprentice, a falconer, you can purchase a captive bred bird. However, in the state of Texas, that bird does not count towards your apprenticeship. In the state of Texas, you have to trap a passage bird and raise it for 2 years for it to count towards your apprenticeship, or fly it for 2 years for it to count as your apprenticeship. Some of y'all might be thinking, wait a minute, why do you got to take a bird from the wild if you could buy a captive bred? Well, it's tradition. It's basically, it's the way it always was. The apprentice was only allowed to have 2 birds, the American kestrel and the red-tailed hawk, and he had to catch a passage bird. In the state of Texas, will allow an apprentice to have a captive bred, but it doesn't count towards your 2-year apprenticeship. Okay, now some of y'all might be thinking, well, and before we go there, let's talk about a sponsor. What I'm finding out in my 8 months of studying up on this is the sponsors, the hardest part of this. Trying to find somebody to sponsor you. Nobody wants to sponsor people. And it's 20 miles an hour, dude. Golly. 20. These people. Somebody's gonna kill somebody in these neighborhoods. A little kid's gonna get killed one day in this neighborhood. And these people. It's crazy. Anyway. So, you know, kestrels are just, they're very high metabolism, very high strung, and that's why the state of Texas, it's not on their recommendation list. Now, you can still get it. You can still have a kestrel in the state of Texas. It's just not one of the birds they recommend on their website. They only recommend 2 birds, the red-tailed hawk and the Harris hawk. And like I said, the red-tailed hawk really is, he's like the modern day pickup truck of falconry. Okay, the other thing about a Harris hawk, there's only one place in Texas there's Harris hawks, and that's out in the Laredo area. To make a trip to Laredo to try to catch a hawk, a passage hawk. That'd be crazy. The chances of you actually coming home with a bird would be incredibly rare. Whereas in Dallas-Fort Worth, in the Dallas-Fort Worth area and surrounding areas, there's thousands of red-tailed hawks. I go out every Sunday bird watching, Sunday mornings. Sometimes I go out on the e-bike and do it. Sometimes I just go out in my truck. I can tell you I can go several places and watch kestrels hunt. I can go several places and watch red-tailed hawks hunt. Okay, and pretty much so, those birds are all over this area, those two birds. It's why those are the two birds that originally you could have. They're the most, those two birds have the most populations of the birds of prey that we have. So let's talk about some other birds, just for an example, like the Cooper's hawk. The Cooper's hawk is one of the hawks that I see here quite regularly. As a matter of fact, y'all, the other day I saw a Cooper's hawk chasing a mourning dove, and it made me think a little Smokey and what he's going to be going through when he gets released. Because he's going to be going through that. He's going to be getting chased by Cooper's hawks. They love mourning dove. But a Cooper's hawk is not a bird for an apprentice. Okay? A Cooper's hawks, they are very high-strung birds. They are extremely intelligent. They process things like the fastest high-speed computers in the world. They're amazing, their processing power. Their world goes at top speed 24/7. Okay? They're also one of the birds that is most killed in the United States. Okay? You know, they hunt other birds, they fly into stuff, unfortunately, and kill themselves. But they're also a bird who can mate before they have their adult plumage. Basically, a year-old goshawk can mate. Doesn't even have to have its adult plumage. And it's one way that they keep their species numbers up, is they're able to breed younger. Okay? But a Cooper's hawk's not a bird for a first-timer. Okay? Some other things that in Texas, I already talked about, you can get a captive bred bird, but it doesn't go towards your apprenticeship. There's some other rules here in the state. Of course, you have to have a sponsor before you can even take the test. Some states will let you take the test before you have a sponsor. In Texas, you have to have a sponsor before you take the test. That's, because it's so hard to find a sponsor, I think the state's actually doing you a favor. They're saying, find a sponsor, then we'll let you take the test. That way you're not paying the money for the test. You never find a sponsor and you wasted your money for your test. Now, you also have to have a state license, but you also have to get a federal license. Okay? And then the other thing, I'm pretty sure in the state of Texas, you got to have a small game hunting license if you're hunting red-tailed hawk, because you're going to be hunting squirrels and rabbits. If you get a kestrel, then you can hunt house sparrows and European starlings. You don't have to have a permit for that. It's why so many people are flying kestrels now and smaller hawks, because they can hunt birds without a permit. You can hunt sparrows and starlings without a permit because they're not native species. So that's the only reason you can do that. Okay? Now let's also talk about this Migratory Bird Act that we have in North America. Looking that up, There's not a North American bird that's not on that. Every bird we have in the United States is on the Migratory Bird Act. Okay, it don't matter what it is, it's on there. Okay, it's why you can hunt starlings and sparrows without a permit, because they're an invasive species. Let me see if I forgot anything. You know, the rules here are pretty basic when it comes to falconry. I don't know about the having to trap your own bird over a captive bred. That rule to me seems, I don't know. It's you know, they want to keep the tradition going. Okay, so you know, some of y'all might be also wondering, Chris, how the hell do you trap a bird of prey? Well, there's actually several ways to do it. The way I will do it is with the ball chetri trap. I've already made my trap. I have it. I will not use my trap unless I can get a license, but I have built my trap. I did that about a month ago. I've been, like I said, I've been studying on this now for about 8 months. I just started spending some money on it. I bought some books that I've been reading about a month ago. There's 4 main books that the state of Texas recommends, or 4 books on their list. There's actually several books, but I only purchased 4 of them. There's a study guide for the test, and then there's like a book on the history of falconry and the equipment and stuff like that. And then there's a book called The Apprentice, Falconer's Apprentice, and it's called basically raising a passage red-tailed hawk, or training a passage red-tailed hawk. It's one of the books that the state recommends. And then there's a book on the American Kestrel called The American Kestrel in Modern Falconry Today, or something like that's the name of it. And it's by Mike Mullinitz. It's a real good book. Those 2 books, in some states you can still only have a kestrel and a red-tailed hawk. That's why those 2 books are recommended. The red-tailed hawk book, I haven't started reading the kestrel book. The red-tailed hawk one is an excellent book. Goes into great detail. Goes into everything that you need to know about taking care of a red-tailed hawk. Now, before we go, let's talk about some of the stuff you're required. Before you can get a bird, after you pass your tests, then you have to have your area you're going to keep this bird set up and built. You have to have all your equipment, your gauntlet glove. The state of Texas gives you a list of stuff you have to have on their website. You have to have all that stuff, plus you have to have your house ready. You have to have a muse. You have to have an outdoor perch with a leash and a water and a bathing pan. Okay, and then you have to have some other stuff. Okay, and then you have to have somebody come out from the federal government, the federal wildlife, and they inspect your stuff. Okay, and if you don't pass, you can't get a bird. Okay, even if you already have your permit. Okay, so you have to have pass that inspection. Then you have to get your federal license as well. It's not just the state. You have to get a federal license. Now, like I said, you probably in Texas got to get a small game hunting license if you're hunting a red-tailed hawk. Okay? A lot of these states, the rules for hunting a bird are the same as if you were out hunting with a gun. Okay? You got to have a permit to hunt. So, we're going to finish this up with the cowboys. They're in training camp. I saw where Dak Prescott's been throwing a lot of interceptions in training camp. Let's hope he's getting those interceptions out in training camp, and we're not going to see him in the regular season like we did all last year. Hopefully he's not throwing away playoff games like he did against San Francisco next year. Because let me tell you something, the Cowboys got a defense to win the Super Bowl. And they have the players on offense to do it. I'm just not sure they have the quarterback. Because from what I've seen for the last 7 years, this guy can't take you to the promised land, which is the Super Bowl. But we'll see. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please leave me a like, hit the subscribe button. Leave me a comment. I hope this gave you just some kind of insight on falconry in Texas and some of the rules and some of the stuff that goes on in the state. So leave me a like, please subscribe, leave me a comment. Y'all have a good one. We'll see you on the next ride. Y'all take care, everybody.